Wild Animals, published by the McLaughlin Brothers.
Number 1. The spotted hyena, or tiger wolf, is a fierce and bloodthirsty animal. It lives in holes or among rocks, and when the sun goes down it sets off in search of food, and no sheepfold or cattle pen is safe from its intrusion. It is not above eating human flesh, and has been known to enter the huts of the Kaffirs, and to carry off and devour the young children. When under great excitement it performs some curious antics, and at the same time gives forth an unearthly laugh, on which account it is called the laughing hyena. It has 3 rows of teeth like the shark, and its tail is furnished with sharp darts like that of the porcupine. Number 2. The lion is the king of beasts, and the most distinguished member of the cat family. It is stealthy in its movements, quick to hear, and swift to attack. The lion creeps cautiously along in search of its prey, and when at the right place leaps out upon the animal and strikes it to the ground. If disappointed in obtaining food, it puts its mouth to the ground and roars most terrifically. This sound alarms all the other animals that may be crouching near, and drives them from their lairs, and in their terror and confusion many of them run across the lion's path and are struck down by its mighty paws. The lion is found in Africa and in parts of Asia. It is easily tamed when taken young, but is always a dangerous pet, as a slight taste of blood will create a thirst for more, and endanger the life of its master. Number 3. The jaguar is a leopard-like wildcat, known in America as the panther. It was an inhabitant of the forest when this country was first discovered, and as jealous of its rights as were the red men. Between the Indians and the wildcat the poor settlers had a terrible time, and thrilling tales are told of unexpected encounters with the cruel painter, as the animal was sometimes called. Its cat-like, stealthy tread prevented its being heard until it was near enough to spring upon its unhappy victim, to whom a musket was but little protection. At dark it left the forest and prowled around the habitations of man, tore open hen roosts, broke into stables and killed the horses, and made but one meal of the contents of the pig pen. The only way to stop these depredations was to kill off all the panthers, old and young, and after a while the settlers succeeded in driving them beyond the borders of civilization. Number 1. The hippopotamus, or sea cow, is a native of western Africa. It is a homely beast, with an enormous large mouth and exceedingly thick hide. It has a ferocious appetite, and devours bushels of grass at a single meal. Its legs are so short, and its body so heavy, that it makes a very clumsy appearance when out of the water. During the day it keeps close to the river, but at night wanders forth in herds, and does great damage to the cultivated fields by trampling down the growing crops. The teeth of the hippopotamus are whiter and more valuable than those of the elephant, and its tough skin is used for a variety of purposes. It has a peculiar snort, which, when given in chorus, is calculated to startle even the bravest. The harpoon, with which the natives attack the hippopotamus, ends in a flat, oval-shaped piece of iron sharpened to a very fine edge. A long and strong rope is fastened to this weapon, at the end of which is a piece of wood. Some hippopotamus hunters go out in long, light canoes, each manned by 2 men, and this sort of hunting requires great skill, courage, and nerve. The harpoon is thrown, the piece of wood floats so that the course of the beast can be known, and the men stand ready to dart another harpoon the instant the enormous jaws appear above the water. In its rage the beast often crunches the boat with its jaws, or shivers it to pieces with a kick from its hind foot. Then the men have to dive and swim for their lives, and while the beast looks for them on top of the water, they, being below, escape its sight. A baby hippopotamus is a curious-looking creature of a pinkish-yellow color. Number 2. The antelope is a native of Africa. It is a very timid and graceful creature, and wonderfully swift of foot. It has handsomely shaped horns and a beautifully tinted coat. Its food consists of tender grass and young twigs, and it generally makes its home under the shade of tall trees. Antelopes move in herds and are very careful to have guards outside the main body to warn them of approaching danger. There are several varieties of antelopes, but all have the same characteristics: long horns, short tail, slender limbs, and cloven hoofs. Though somewhat resembling the deer, they do not belong to that family, but are more closely allied to the sheep and goats. Deer shed their horns, but antelopes do not. Number 1. The brown bear is found in Europe and Asia and is the most common of all bears. It makes its home in caves in mountainous districts and subsists chiefly on roots and vegetables and the small limbs of young trees. It is very fond of ants and also of honey, and displays considerable ingenuity in securing these dainties. The bear is also very partial to ripe corn and is not satisfied with a small allowance, but will sit on its haunches in a cornfield and gather into its arms as much as it can hold, the ears of which it then devours. A well-fed brown bear will increase astonishingly in size and in weight, and will live to a very great age. The brown bear, when captured young, is readily tamed and can be taught many accomplishments. It soon learns to know and to follow its owner, and is a playful and affectionate companion. The young cubs are full of comical antics, and play with each other like young children. The bear is a good climber, a good swimmer, and a good digger. Late in the autumn it retires to its den, and remains in a torpid state for at least 3 months, during which time another little family is born. In January or February they leave their winter quarters and resume their sports and pastimes in the sunshine. Bears display great attachment for each other, and are very affectionate toward human friends. Not many years ago it was quite a common sight, even in the streets of our large cities, to see a man with a hand organ leading a brown bear by a stout chain, and occasionally halting to give an outdoor performance. Crowds were collected, for a bear is always a great curiosity, and much amusement was afforded by Bruin's curious antics. One bear was taught to waltz, and to hold a gun, and to go through the military drill with the precision of a soldier. It was funny to see the big creature going through its tasks in such a solemn way, eventually wondering what it was all about, and why the people should laugh so heartily at its most graceful efforts. As several persons had been hugged to death by these strange pets, a law was passed that no more should be brought to this country unless they formed part of a menagerie, and a performing bear would even now be something of a curiosity. Although the brown bear prefers roots and vegetables for its daily diet, when pressed by hunger it will seize on cattle and also attack human beings. On this account it is not safe for travelers to venture too near their haunts or to run the risk of sleeping out at night without a companion to keep watch. The brown bear figures largely in fairy stories, which generally show forth Bruin's really kind and gentle disposition, and teach the lesson that a warm heart may often be found under a rough coat. Hans Andersen tells the following pretty little story of What the Moon Saw. In the parlor of a small inn at the end of a small town, said the moon, there sat a man eating his supper. He had been traveling about with a bear all day, picking up a little money here and there, and he was very tired and very hungry. The bear was tied up outside the palings and was perfectly safe, neither would he harm anybody. Upstairs in the garret 3 little children were playing in the light of my rays, the eldest of whom was about 6 years old, and the youngest not more than 2. Presently there was a sound of heavy footsteps on the stairs. Stomp, stomp, stomp. Who could it be? The door flew open, and there stood Bruin. Great, shaggy old Bruin. He had got tired of waiting outside, and had made his way up the stairs. I saw it all, said the moon. The children were at first so frightened at sight of the great shaggy beast that each of them crept into a corner and dared not speak. But Bruin found them all out and smelt of them, but did them no harm. This must be a big dog, they said, and began to stroke him. When he laid down on the floor, the youngest boy climbed on his back and hid his head, with its golden curls, in the beast's shaggy fur, and played at hide-and-seek. Presently the eldest boy took his drum and began to beat upon it as loudly as he could. Then Bruin rose up on his hind legs and began to dance. The children were delighted. After that, each boy took his gun and gave one to the bear also, which he held quite properly, and then they marched around the room in fine style. What a splendid playfellow they had found! How well he kept step! 1, 2, 1, 2. Oh, it was grand! Suddenly someone came to the door. It was the children's mother. She was dumb with terror. Her face was oh so white. Her mouth was open. Her eyes were fixed and staring. The youngest boy nodded to her, his face shining with joy, and said, "See, we are playing soldiers." Then the bear's master came up. This was what the moon saw, and it might easily have been a true story, for bears have been known to do queer things and to show their fondness for children in a variety of ways. Leopold, Duke of Lorraine, had a bear called Marco, of the sagacity and sensibility of which we have the following remarkable instance. During the winter of 1709, a Savoyard boy, ready to perish with cold in a barn, in which he had been put by a good woman, with some more of his companions, thought proper to enter Marco's hut, without reflecting on the danger which he ran in exposing himself to the mercy of the animal which occupied it. Marco, however, instead of doing any injury to the child, took him between his paws and warmed him by pressing him to his breast until the next morning, when he suffered him to depart to ramble about the city. The Savoyard returned in the evening to the hut, and was received with the same affection. For several days he had no other retreat, and it added not a little to his joy to perceive that the bear regularly reserved part of his food for him. A number of days passed in this manner, without the servants knowing anything of the circumstance. At length, when one of them came one day to bring the bear his supper, rather later than ordinary, he was astonished to see the animal roll his eyes in a furious manner, and seeming as if he wished him to make as little noise as possible, for fear of awaking the child, whom he clasped to his breast. The animal, though ravenous, did not appear the least moved with the food which was placed before him. The report of this extraordinary circumstance was soon spread at court, and reached the ears of Leopold, who, with part of his courtiers, was desirous of being satisfied of the truth of Marco's generosity. Several of them passed the night near his hut, and beheld with astonishment that the bear never stirred as long as his guest showed an inclination to sleep. At break of day the child awoke, was very much ashamed to find himself discovered, and fearing that he would be punished for his rashness, begged pardon. The bear, however, caressed him, and endeavored to prevail on him to eat what had been brought to him the evening before, which he did at the request of the spectators, who conducted him to the prince. Having learned the whole history of this singular alliance, and the time which it had continued, Leopold ordered care to be taken of the little Savoyard, who would doubtless have soon made his fortune had he not died a short time after. Number 1. The polar, or white bear, is an inhabitant of the Arctic regions. It differs in shape from all other bears, having a smaller head and a longer neck. Its fur is white and smooth, and its toes are joined together like those of ducks and geese, so that it is as much at home in the water as it is on the land. When on the land it can run a great deal faster than any man. It feeds principally upon the seals that make their home in the icy waters. The polar bear mounts the hills of ice or hummocks to get a view of the wide plain whereon a seal may be resting, or to snuff the air that lets it know that the remains of a whale or a walrus have been deserted by the fishermen, and will make it an ample feast. As the seal is very watchful, the bear is not always successful in seizing its prey, and sometimes has to go without food for several days. The following instance is given as proof of the sagacity of the bear. A seal that had come up out of the water to breathe lay on a cake of ice, and was marked out by a bear for its prey. The bear, diving under the ice, made its way toward the hole near the seal. The seal, observing its approach, plunged into the water, and the bear soon appeared on the ice with the seal in its mouth. As the polar bear is a native of a cold climate, where ice and snow prevail the year round, we may imagine how homesick it must be when kept in captivity, and how it must suffer through the hot summer days. Bear's meat is a welcome addition to the larder of Arctic explorers, who vary their monotonous life by hunting and fishing. The polar bear is a dangerous animal to meet, and great caution has to be used in approaching it, as its scent is very keen, and it will often turn and attack a human being without any reason. Even when seriously wounded, it will fight desperately with teeth and claws till death ends the struggle. Sometimes a polar bear will get adrift upon an ice floe and be borne out to sea, and hundreds of miles away from its own home. When it reaches land, it starts out at once to appease its hunger, and sheep and cattle fall before its devouring way. The loss is soon discovered, and the bear is speedily destroyed. Sometimes quite a number of polar bears are thus brought to civilized shores, against their will, and manage to do considerable damage before they are discovered and put to death. The polar bear, being very cunning and wise, is not easily entrapped, although it displays no fear in approaching the vessels of the whale fishers. Number 1. The elephant is found in both Asia and Africa. The Asiatic elephant has a longer head and smaller ears than its African relative, whose ears are simply enormous. Elephants live in herds, and are always found in deep forests near a stream of water. The most wonderful thing about an elephant is its long proboscis, or trunk, with which it can pull down trees or pick up small blades of grass. Tame elephants are sometimes made use of to capture the wild ones, but when hunters want to catch a great number of elephants, they corral them. A corral is a large place fenced round with strong stakes. It has an opening for the elephants to go in, but no way in which they can get out. At night the hunters surround the herd with lighted torches. They make loud cries and beat drums so that the elephants begin to run, and there is but one way for them to run, and that is into the corral. The Asiatic elephant is an intelligent creature, and is made the servant and companion of man. It is made great use of on state occasions, and is especially trained for tiger hunting. In spite of the training, the elephant has a great dread of its tawny foe, and when brought face to face with a living tiger, is so terrified by its fierce bounds, its furious eyes, and savage yells, that it generally turns tail and beats an undignified retreat. White elephants are occasionally found in India, and are treated like royal personages. They are decorated with costly gems, have magnificent houses to live in, and are provided with silver eating troughs. Number 2. The Bengal tiger is a most ferocious animal. It hides itself in the tall grass so that it can scarcely be seen, and crawls stealthily along in pursuit of its victim, on whom it springs with deadly force. Its feet are furnished with hooked claws as sharp as sickles, which cut deeply into the flesh, and with these weapons he can bring almost any foe to the ground. The natives have a great dread of the man-eater, as they call the tiger, and are paralyzed with terror at its appearance. The native horses are greatly excited when they scent the tiger's presence, or see a bit of its skin, and manifest this fear by kicking and plunging and flying in an opposite direction. The tiger is a cunning animal and difficult to entrap. It can never be wholly tamed or trusted, and it is not safe to make a companion of this or any other savage beast. Number 1. The rhinoceros is a singular-looking animal, with a horn on the end of its nose. This horn is its only weapon of defense, and its strength and sharpness is shown by the way in which it plows up the ground and cuts down bushes, apparently for sport. It has an extremely thick hide that hangs in folds over its body, so that it has the appearance of being clad in armor. Between the folds of this thick skin there is an underskin, or cuticle, which is left bare and is quite soft. It has an upper lip, like a horse, which it can extend to the distance of 6 or 7 inches from the nose, and draw it to a point so that it somewhat resembles a tapper. This lip is soft and appears to be the chief seat of feeling. With this instrument, which serves the same end as the trunk of an elephant, the animal can take up and grasp with great force the smallest substance. The rhinoceros frequents the river banks and enjoys wallowing in the mud. It is very irritable in temper, and when in a fit of rage will dash at any animal that is near and kill it with a blow from its horn. Only the hardest kind of bullets can penetrate its thick skin, which is made into shields by the natives of both Asia and Africa. Number 2. The giraffe, or camelopard, is the tallest of quadrupeds. It is from 18 to 20 feet in height, and has a singular form and an exceedingly long neck. It cannot graze on level ground, but lifts its head to gather the tender leaves from branches 3 times as high as a tall man. The most beautiful part of its body is the head. The mouth is small, the eyes are brilliant and full. It is graceful in some of its motions, but most awkward in running, and when pursued, will hide its head and kick furiously at the enemy. Its hind legs are so light and its blows so rapid that the eye cannot follow them. They are sufficient for its defense against the lion, and it never uses its horns in resisting any attack. The giraffe is a gentle, playful creature, and rather fond of admiration. Its hide is extremely thick, and is used for shoe soles, shields, and similar purposes. Number 3. The zebra, or wild horse, presents a striking appearance. Its color is creamy white, marked with regular black stripes all over its head, neck, body, and legs. It is a light and graceful animal, with slender legs and small hoofs. It has a stubborn disposition and is not easily tamed, and makes its home in the mountainous districts of South Africa.